You know, part of me really does not want to do this, as I feel like I am simply giving attention to somebody who is rather desperately begging for it. But after about 24 messages asking me to do this, or simply going, hey, he made the video, I guess I'm somewhat honor-bound, aren't I, to respond to the Templin Institute, the death of Cannon and his argument for female space marines. Ugh. Very well then, now a couple of things first. We are going to, let's see here, where's the thing, ah, there we go. Playback rate, 1.25, that sounds at least reasonable, as I do have other things to do today. And, you know, the worst part of all of this is, without watching this video, I am 98% certain I could talk about this video without ever actually having watched the video, as the 3 arguments that are going to be made is I'm confident enough to say, in order of appearance, is 1. Nothing matters because of the unreliable narrator. There is no lore, there is no canon, we can know absolutely nothing for absolute certain, and therefore there could be female space marines, or something to that equation. Now, of course, this also means that if nothing matters, then literally nothing at all matters. The entire universe doesn't actually exist, and it might as well be a collection of Oompa Loompa fluffy creatures simply making all of this shit up whilst living in a fluffy green paradise for all we know. It obviously undermines the entire point of the setting, which is why it is such a thoroughly idiotic position to adopt. Then, number 2, realizing this, he's going to backtrack everything and start thinking to himself, okay, well, clearly my position renders me rather retarded, and as a person who does law for a living, also in a situation where I don't have a job anymore, because everything I base myself upon is irrelevant and doesn't exist, or at the very least, you cannot know if it actually does exist. And so he will become far more conciliatory and simply start rowing back the shit he started on Twitter with. Like, oh god, you completely misunderstand 40k, you understand nothing, give me your comment so I can demolish you in a YouTube video. Very aggressive, very confident, all of that is gonna go right out the door. And my prediction number 3 is that at some point he's going to bring up the "you can believe in dragons but not rich white black people" from Game of Thrones fame, where there'll be, okay, so, well, fantasy is a thing, you've got dragons, so surely the Valerians can be black, right? Even if that is against the established law, right? Because dragons exist. No. Just because one element of fantasy exists does not mean that every single element of fantasy should exist, or that you have complete license to do with the law whatever the hell you want. In the same way that, as my good friend V likes to say, placing a BMW with rocket launchers in Game of Thrones would just look kinda weird. So, with those 3 predictions made, I guess we're gonna have to get on with it. Now, I'm not gonna bother making this into an edited video because, again, frankly, I have other things to do, but I'm gonna put on the headset here and do it the good old-fashioned way by simply pausing when something objectionable is said. It's a nice presentation, though. The death of Cannon. Oh, goody.
The process of transforming a new recruit into a warrior of the Adeptus Astartes is among the most challenging and complex operations that the Imperium of Mankind is still capable of performing. It remains a dangerous procedure, with many of its underlying principles barely understood, and even an otherwise healthy applicant might suffer from unpredictable mutations or other adverse effects on their physical, mental, or spiritual well-being.
So far, so good.
According to those familiar with the process, the first requirement of any Space Marine applicant is that they be biologically male. But this has understandably led to the question, why?
Okay, so, right off the gate, understandably led to the question, why? Well, not really, because pretty much anyone who's been into 40k for any extent of time knows why. It is because the books say so. Straight up. You literally don't have to explain more than that. The lore has dictated that they are all male. It's even giving you an explanation that it's keyed to their hormonal balance. And in fact, the idea that the Space Marines themselves are essentially biological, or genetical more correctly, clones of the Primarchs. And since the Primarchs were male, their process to create Space Marines only functions on males. Not to mention the realistic fact as well, in that this process, as he mentions in the video, is incredibly dangerous, and even men with youth at the absolute top peak physical perfection that humanity can achieve, they still die like flies during this procedure. So, you know, it's a pretty harsh one to subject women to as well, obviously. But that is why, right there. Now let's hear the explanation as to why is not the case.
Why are there no female Space Marines? The official line on the matter is that the process by which Space Marines are created relies inherently on the hormonal and biological makeup of the human male, meaning that only males can be subjected to the transformation. Ah, okay, so there it is. Case closed, right?
Yes, correct.
There are no female Space Marines due to limitations inherent to the process of creating them. Well, not really. The most important thing to remember when analyzing the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium, something which sadly many people seem to forget or ignore, is that every bit of information we have.
Point number 1. The unreliable narrator. I don't even need to read this shit, because all I need to see is this thing at the bottom down here. Aaron Dembski-Bowden, the man who turned the God Emperor into an idiot. But, let's proceed.
Every slice of text, every image, every piece of footage, everything is coming from a source that can be either biased, misinformed, or outright lying. This universe can never be condensed into a neat and tidy encyclopedia where every bit of data is attributed to some peer-reviewed journal or first-hand account.
Peer-reviewed journal. Okay, well, first and foremost, no universe in history can actually be, you know, nothing lives up to that standard. Like, oh, you must have a peer-reviewed journal about your lore, sir. What? I'm presuming he's being hyperbolic, otherwise that would be rather retarded. But this idea, the unreliable narrator, as I mentioned previously, was literally an excuse made up by GW to explain why many of their Black Library authors took significant liberties with their setting, to the point of Space Marines carrying around multi-lasers, or one of the other ridiculous example was that the Eldar started stealing Imperial vehicles because they figured they were just way better than their own flying shit. I do quite like that one. Again, it was literally an excuse. It wasn't for any lore reasons, it was because GW didn't want to be bothered with quality ensuring everything. It had no in-universe basis. But, okay, moving on.
The history of the Imperium and the galaxy it inhabits is instead a blend of legend, myth, contradictions, deception, and forgery. In the grim darkness of the far future, objective truth does not exist. Anyone who tells you otherwise is probably looking to claim your soul.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so now he's presenting the in-universe argument, in that objective truth doesn't exist because the Imperium is censorious. How do you know this? I mean, what are your peer-reviewed sources? Again, this leads back onto the idea that if nothing matters, then actually nothing matters. And for all you know, the Imperium could be a place filled with beautiful puppies playing in the sun. And all of this is simply a hallucinogenic-induced trauma state or nightmare from one of the puppies, who fell from an enormous tower and broke his skull. Anything can happen. And then to say that there is no objective truth, well, if there is no objective anything, then objective truth can also exist at the same time as it doesn't exist. It's a ridiculous reductivist position, and this is why reductivism doesn't work, because you must have something to base shit on. Hey, moving on. Oh, by the way, I'm going to add in one prediction here, because if I know where this is going, there's going to be a Rogue Trader reference in, I'd say, relatively soon.
So if you read the aforementioned quote and decided to accept it at face value, good for you. The Imperium is always in need of easily persuaded, uncritical souls to work as leech harvesters and mind thralls. But
okay, I kind of like that one. That was kind of neat. I mean, again, we don't know if they're certain leech harvesters. They might simply be fat, wealthy people running farms full of automated worker robots. Because again, nothing matters. I know I'm belaboring that point, but it really is the key Achilles heel of this entire interpretation.
For me, the more interesting way to interpret this universe is to never fully trust anything you've been told. So when available sources claim that the process of creating Space Marine
How does that even work? I'm sorry, just one more objection. How do you even interpret a universe where nothing exists? Like, what is your basis? What do you assume is real and not real? What do you even use as a starting point? Like, hell, it's like, you have to lay out metrics to being like, well, does the Imperium exist? Yes, because it at least leech harvesters. Okay, what are you building that on? Well, the same sources that I build everything else on. Wikipedia. I'm sorry, but it's such a self-defeating notion, you know?
Is only successful in men, and in almost every instance, artwork and footage depicts the Astartes universally as men.
Almost every? I think actually every. No, literally every. There is no example of female Space Marines anywhere in the lore, and the oft-cited example, the two warrior adventurers in the Rogue Trader sprue, they're sisters of sin, as you can see from their little shoulder pad insignia, which, if I remember, I'll edit in on screen here. I did promise myself I wouldn't do any editing. But, anywho, they were proto-sisters of battle, not Space Marines.
I'm inclined to believe that, yeah, female Space Marines don't seem to exist. But do I take this as unshakable evidence? No.
And point number 2. So far I'm doing pretty well, aren't I? Namely, the conciliatory position, where, oh no, I didn't actually mean this. It's just that, you know, it's a possibility, you see. I even agree with you that it's not a very likely one, but it's a possibility. No, again, this isn't even headcanon. This is, against every single solitary piece of evidence, I have decided to believe something different. Okay, you're insane. That's the most charitable interpretation I can give for that.
Genetic engineering is one of the few areas of scientific advancement that survived the Age of Strife more or less intact.
Actually, I'm wasting too much time objecting to every piece of minute trivia that he gets wrong. Let's just keep on going.
It is very likely the only field of study in which the Imperium can even approach the marvels and miracles of the Golden Age of humanity.
I know he says only even approach, but considering the shit they did during the Golden Age, genetically engineering entire speed, no. I'm not going to get into it. I'm a Zen.
This is precisely why the Emperor used it as the basis of the Thunder Warriors, Custodes, and eventually the Space Marines. The idea that the Imperium's biotechnical
used it as the basis. Well, actually, according to the new law, the Emperor did very little, and most of these Space Marines were actually created by random dudes introduced in the call book. But no, he didn't even really use it as a basis. He invented that shit. The God Emperor was around during the Golden Age of technology and he built the foundation upon which he eventually created the Thunder Warriors, etc. I'm going to stop objecting because I'll be here all day.
Visions were able to create genetically modified warriors who can spit acid and acquire a subject's memories by eating its flesh, where somehow...
Wait, hold on. Let me just... What was that? Was that the dragon? Was that the dragon argument? It was, wasn't it?
Divisions were able to create genetically modified warriors who can spit acid and acquire a subject's memories by eating its flesh, were somehow thwarted by comparatively minor differences in human hormones.
And point number 3. See, because they can spit acid and do ridiculous things stated in the lore, surely we can do this other thing that is not stated in the lore, has no evidence basis for it whatsoever, and is simply just, oh well, I damn well made it up, now accept it. Shit, we're only like 3 minutes in. Oh. I'll mark down my bingo card as completed, shall I? Moving on.
Well, I don't buy it, not completely. I am also aware that Imperial organizations work tirelessly to suppress information, and that the decision of what information necessitates suppression often comes down to the archaic and nonsensical opinions of zealots and the insane. And furthermore, it is often very difficult to ascertain what is being deliberately suppressed and what the Imperium has just gotten wrong. The earliest encounters with the Necrons saw them labeled as Chaos Androids, while until recently, it was deemed as incontrovertible that the Squats had been rendered extinct by the Tyranids.
Okay. So, this is not the universe being inconsistent. This is the universe growing and changing, as any universe does. Now, one of the biggest things that led me to be so interested in 40k was the remarkable solidity of its universe and its incredible internal consistency. The 40k universe has been 40k for 20-odd years now, with very little in the way of major changes, with the exception of a handful of major shakeups, like the Grey Knights having had a pretty big retcon, and the Necrons as well, both because their original lore were frankly stupid and or boring in the case of the Necrons. This does not indicate the unreliable narrator, which again is simply an excuse. It simply is that the universe has changed somewhat over time, but way less than most universes, and it has remained internally consistent for far longer than most. This is honestly what I would expect a Rogue Trader reference to pop up, and maybe we'll get one right about there.
Even the Imperium's own history is often misunderstood. There were times when the prevailing narrative was that Horus was not the Emperor's favored Primarch, but rather an especially competent general, and his heresy lasted only 7 days and 7 nights.
Oh, wait, hold on. Is that the sun?
With all this in
There
mind...
we go, yes, the not at all female Space Marines. This is an illustration from an American magazine not affiliated with GW. It is fan fiction, but yes. So that's the idea of the Rogue Trader thing, right? Oh, back in Rogue Trader, the lore was different. Yes, it's because Rogue Trader wasn't actually 40k. It was the throw shit at the wall and see what sticks phase of the universe's evolution. It was when GW didn't really know if this was going to be interesting, and so simply just bagged a bunch of popular things, threw it at the screen, and hoped that some of it would eventually stick. This is why original 40k had a lot of ridiculous references to, what was it, Sherlock, Obi-Wan, Clouseau, or something stupid ridiculous like that. In reality, proper 40k starts from about 2nd edition, then remains pretty much consistent up until 4th edition, at which point it completely solidifies, and then completely remains pure 40k with very few changes up until, I'd say, 2017, frankly, and the introduction of the Primary Space Marines, which was much idiotic, but during that entire period, 40k remained solid 40k, which is why I brought up the Rogue Trader reference, because whenever this argument is made, it has to reference back to Rogue Trader rather than 40k.
And my personal interpretation is that female Astartes almost certainly existed during the time of the Great Crusade. I think the Emperor, in this progressive era, had
Progressive era. The Imperial truth was not particularly progressive. I need to stop objecting to everything he gets wrong, because I'll be here all the day.
fully mastered the creation of the Astartes, regardless of gender. Perhaps even some famous figures from this era were in fact female.
Okay. Let me stop you there for a second. God, I am interrupting way too much. So, here's the thing as well. His previous argument was that we can never know what is real or true because we can't read the books and infer what is real, because the books might have been altered by the Imperium, who was, writing them down. The fact is, this isn't true, though. We are not reading things like the Horus Heresy from the perspective of an Imperial chronicler writing it down. We are reading it from the perspective of, well, God, the author, who is allowing us to peek in on conversations and eavesdrop on the events. We know these events are real and canon because they are presented as they are real and canon. At no point is it suggested that all of this is simply just some fever dream made up by a handful of raving lunatics. It is not written in such a way as to present itself as a chronicle, rather it is simply the events as they transpire. This is why we know we can trust them, because they simply seem to be the events that happened. This excuse only really holds up if you are reading, well, an actual chronicle of events. And even then, in most cases, like the Imperial Armor, for example, they presage it by saying, like, this is a chronicle of the conflict, but it has been recorded with as little bias as possible so as to provide the fullest and best picture to Inquisitors or anyone that might be interested in studying it, with the appropriate security clearance, of course. As your perspective, you as the reader of 40k, your perspective is that of a higher-ranking member, which is why you're not going to be seeing a whole lot of outright lies. And again, unreliable narrator is not actually a story device, it is more along the lines of an excuse. But carry on.
But at some point during the history of the Imperium, possibly because of complications with implanting gene seed, but more likely because of some ignorant proclamation by the Ecclesiarchy or another imperial institution, the idea of recruiting female Space Marines fell out of favor.
Ah yes, the Ecclesiarchy. We're more than happy to have an army of Sisters of Battle with power armor, but female Space Marines? Gosh no. It's a very bad excuse, but fair enough.
Today, if any still remain within the chapters, they are a rarity.
You'd think that would raise an eyebrow or two, but
Furthermore, I am almost convinced that with the slightest bit of effort, the Space Marine chapters could again accept female recruits. but the Imperium has become so entrenched in religious dogma and ignorance that it's become unable to question and possibly disprove what it considers to be the absolute truth.
Yes, like the slightest bit of effort. Again, the God Emperor couldn't do it. Cole couldn't do it. I think we've pretty definitively proven that this is not a slight bit of effort here to change the God Emperor's work, but details.
The Imperium senselessly wasting 50% of its own available manpower.
No, it is not wasting 50% of its available manpower. God damn it. I need to stop commenting on the trivia, but I need to stop saying that too. God damn it. I'm reminding myself more than you at this point. Okay, so the Space Marines are not 50% of humanity, nor could they ever be, nor would they ever be, nor have they ever been. They are the absolute cream of the crop. The Space Marines themselves, it's not that they don't have a shortage of recruits. Space Marine chapters recruit from entire planets of willing aspirants. The Ultramarines are bombarded with recruits every goddamn year to carry out the great race to the Fortress of Macragge. It is not a shortage of recruits, it is a shortage of perfect recruits. Those who can live up to the ridiculous standards of the Space Marines. And in these cases, they are exclusively male. And this is something that is reflected also in our real world. Actually, let me give you the most charitable interpretation. If females could be Space Marines, they would make up between hard 0 and 0 point something% of the total number of Space Marines as we see in today's modern special forces, where female first-line operators, the best of the best, if there even are any, are such a vanishingly small percentage as to be a statistical anomaly. Wonderful example of this. Norway has a special forces unit made up entirely of women. Oh, imagine that. That defeats my own argument, doesn't it? Jägertroppen. Or hunter troop, if you wish. The thing is, this formation was created specifically because during operations in Afghanistan, the Försvarets Operationskommando? I can't remember exactly, but basically our Special Forces Command were like, well, we're operating in an environment here that has very specific religious connotations, and they're not particularly tolerant. Having some females along with us to interpret and interrogate women, for example, would be extremely useful because they're simply not going to talk to our big bearded Norwegian men. So could we get some females to accompany our Special Forces troops? And so they open up the ability to join the Special Forces women. Not a single woman passed. Not a one. They continued to try, but it continued to fail. And so eventually they figured like, okay, we'll make a new all-female Special Forces formation. And you know how they managed to get people to finally join that and, you know, actually complete the requirements to join it? I'll give you 3 guesses. Just between you and me. They lowered the requirements to about half of that the men needed to do. And not even just the best of the men, they lowered it to about half of that required by the average parachute special soldier. Now that is a bit of more of an elite formation, don't get me wrong, but that is open to first-year recruits. It certainly is no Tier 1 formation by any stretch of the imagination. And the female Special Forces had half the fitness requirements of that again. I'll try to remember to put them up on screen here so you can count it out. It'll probably be in Norwegian, however. Well, good luck with that anyways. But again, that's why. The Space Marines would probably not even accept female recruits because what would really be a crime is wasting the precious resource that is gene seed on an applicant that is almost certainly, in fact pretty much certainly, going to be an inferior fighter than a male recruit. But I need to get on with the video. It's going very slow.
If you'll pardon the term, because of some ancient misunderstanding, is the kind of tragedy this regime is built on. Now admittedly, this is just my personal headcanon, or fan fiction if you prefer.
Excusez-moi. Okay. Alright there. You're really butthurt. Oh, Twitter icons. Oh my god, dude, I didn't know you were this butthurt about it. Oh, Jesus, now I feel like I'm being a bit mean there. So, this tweet right here, the tweet that he blocked me for and then started responding to me behind a block wall, incidentally, is the tweet I sent him. I recognize the gate and my... Jesus Christ, dude. I hope I'm not giving you nightmares or anything. Like, I consider you to be an idiot, straight up, and I vehemently disagree with your opinion on 40k here. Vehemently, stridently so, but, I don't want you to obsess about it or anything. Jesus. Right. Moving on in the name of mercy.
And it's based on even less evidence than the conclusion that there are no female space marines whatsoever. I'm sure you can poke holes in my opinion just as easily as I did in the official
A yet further amelioration. Yeah, no, I was completely wrong all along, but, this is just my opinion, bruh.
stance of the Imperium. I don't even necessarily think that my stance is the most realistic, it's just what I happen to think is most interesting. That's what I enjoy about this universe. It invites differences of interpretation. But again, I can't put any more stock into this own interpretation of mine than I would into anyone else's. The universe just doesn't work that way.
I just want to point out again, this is a supposed lore channel stating that he can't put any stock in his own interpretations of the lore. It seems like shooting yourself in the foot, but what do I know?
Is it possible there never were any female space marines? Yes. Is it possible there are female space marines somewhere out there in the galaxy?
No.
Yes. Is it possible there could be an entire chapter consisting only of female space marines? Absolutely. No. And is it possible that this all-female chapter is in fact the Ultramarines or the Black Templars or the Space Wolves? There's a lot of evidence to the contrary, and while I can be 99% certain that this isn't true and that Marneus Calgar is indeed a man, the very nature of this universe means it's impossible to say with absolute certainty. Even in our own era.
Stop, dude. Just... I thought I was exaggerating when I was bringing up the example of the fluffy puffy puppies being the actual reality of 40k. But if this is how far we're going, no, 40k is actually a universe made up entirely of puppies. Highly intelligent puppies that have created a utopian society where all of the puppies live together in perfect peace and harmony, sharing one enormous apple. The apple never grows smaller no matter how many puppies nibble at it. The apple is also their father, and speaks reassuring words to them, even as they continue to consume his flesh. That's 40k.
There have been times when historical figures commonly believed to have been men were later discovered to have been women, and vice versa. And
that is partially true. It's a ridiculous rarity, but yes, that has happened. I can think of only 2 examples off the top of my head, but it has happened. Now, of course, the point here is that 40k isn't reality, because in 40k we have the literal perspective of gods watching the story unfold, but details.
Doesn't this kind of revelation seem like it would fit just perfectly into the age of the Imperium?
No, not even remotely.
Sure, a figure like Marneus Calgar is a bit of a stretch. If evidence came out that he was in fact a woman, I probably wouldn't believe that and fall back on my own interpretation, but
Marneus Calgar is dead, by the way. He was killed, and this is his slave. Whatever the hell his name is. Which is another piece of modern-day lore, incidentally. Lovely.
I mention this only to illustrate the idea that history is not immune to drastic change in light of new evidence.
Is this where we get the Rogue Trader reference?
And the history of the Imperium even more so. Maybe in our current era, being 99% certain about something is enough to arrive at a justifiable conclusion, but the 42nd millennium is a time in which we need to forget the promise of progress and understanding.
Again, how do you even know that? I cannot get over this. The ridiculousness of this argument. It's like, hey, I base my interpretation on 40k, and that interpretation is that 40k isn't real.
And the power of science and technology. Within the Imperium, that 99% might as well be 0. And this extends to every aspect of the far future. Did Horus kill Sanguinius before his final confrontation with the Emperor? Maybe. I'd even go so far as to say probably. But if someone told me that during the Siege of Terra, Sanguinius fell to the Black Rage, killed Horus, and then tried to kill the Emperor, and this was suppressed by the High Lords of Terra to preserve the honor of one of mankind's greatest heroes,
considering the High Lords of Terra had barely even been formed at the time and would have very little real power, considering the... And in fact, no, I'm not even going to keep objecting here.
There is nothing I can do to definitively prove that person wrong. Likewise, nobody can disprove the idea that Space Marine chapters out there might have unlocked or retained the technologies allowing for the successful transformation of female recruits.
No, I can absolutely disprove that by the simple fact that they don't exist. If something doesn't exist, it's not real. Oh, sweet baby Jesus, save my soul.
Or that female Space Marines might remain common across the chapters, and this has just been suppressed by the Inquisition for whatever reason.
For whatever reason. God, the foundation of all of this. It's like, well, why would the Inquisition do that, Templin?
There are an endless number of explanations as to why female space marines might exist.
No, there are an endless number of ridiculous, made-up, pulled out of your own cavernous anus reasons, not...
And none of them conflict with the essential nature of the universe. Because the essential nature is fluid, always changing as new information is discovered and
This is where we're going to get the Rogue Trader reference.
old information repressed.
The only constant is tone and atmosphere.
Yes, because Rogue Trader changed, therefore everything changed. No, this is not true. 40k is not fundamentally fluent. It has remained consistent for close to a quarter of a century. 24 years of nearly no change, with only a couple of exceptions. 40k is a remarkably internally consistent universe, or was, at least until Cole popped his filthy ass up. This is not a nonsensical argument, and it is made solely to try and justify your own ridiculous fantasies.
Details are ultimately secondary to that. And if you disagree with me, if your interpretation of the grim darkness of the far future is different from mine, well, this will be one of the few times I admit this, but your interpretation is every bit as valid as mine.
No, it isn't. It is legitimately not. My interpretation is a lot more valid than yours. Yours is invalid. Yours is stupid. Yours is actually ridiculous. I am not going to accept, like, this is the conciliatory gesture again. Like, hey, can't we just agree that everybody's opinion is equal? No, you are wrong. And my opinion is flat out, objectively, measurably better than yours. End of conversation.
You can look honestly at the 42nd millennium and come to the conclusion that female space marines just don't belong there. Not out of any place of misogyny, but a genuine belief that it just doesn't make sense given what we know. I respect your position. And if tomorrow,
somehow I don't think so,
some higher authority decreed that there are in fact female space marines, 100% full stop, I would, without reservation, defend your right to ignore that decree.
No, you wouldn't. 100% call bullshit. This is the, what is it? When I am weak, I plead to you for mercy because that is your ideal. I plead to you for tolerance and understanding because you believe in that. And when I am strong, I crush you because that is my ideal. I butchered that quote, I know, but that's where we are here. Like, that is... You come out on Twitter and go like, I'll crush all your arguments, debate me, bro, and then run back screaming to your cupboard and go, bro, I respect your opinion. No. This is a bit of a character judgment here, but I'm pretty sure you're the kind of person that the previous quote refers to.
And to continue to interpret this universe in whatever way makes it the most interesting to you. But I would ask that you extend the same mindset to me.
No. I refuse, again, for the reasons I just mentioned. My opinion is correct, yours is wrong. Simple dimple.
And everyone else, whether I say that female space marines exist, or Sanguinius killed Horus, or that the entire universe of the 42nd millennium is actually within a bottle kept by a wizard in Reichland.
The problem is the latter interpretation there is actually more likely than your female space marine one. And again, no!
What I truly love about the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium is that its very nature precludes the possibility of someone, anyone, coming in and telling you what is right, what is wrong, and that there's only one way to experience it.
Ah yes, what I truly love about this universe is that it doesn't exist.
And I'll let you in on a little secret. During one of our investigations into the Imperium of Man, I included a detail that has since become the single most referenced bit of lore on this channel. We receive comments about how cool it is almost daily. The latest one, at time of recording, was left about 80 minutes ago. But that little bit of lore, according to the latest information available, either no longer exists or never did. But I thought it was cool and I included it anyways. Whether or not it's true really isn't important.
Although it kind of is. It means you made shit up. And hey, on occasion, I extrapolate information as well, like the Siege of Rax, for example, where I made an addendum after the video basically saying, right, the numbers that the book gives makes absolutely no sense with the action the book claims is taking place, and so I've upscaled the numbers. But there is a difference between that and, well, making shit up, which sounds like what you did here, but oh well.
It's true to me, and that's enough.
No, just...
And given how popular it's become on this channel, I kind of think people agree with me, even if they don't know it.
Hey, I lied to you, but you liked it, but since you don't know it, it don't hurt you. Fair enough, I guess.
And while I certainly understand and even appreciate having an ironclad history, a firm and uncompromising canon or continuity, if you will, there are also times when it's refreshing to just not deal with that. Wouldn't it have been nice to have the option to say that Rey is not Palpatine's granddaughter, or that...
Yeah, and I have that option. That is where my headcanon comes in. I can simply ignore the stuff that doesn't make any sense within the lore, and that is one of them.
the war against the Night King was way cooler than whatever this is, and to have those interpretations be totally valid? Now I am no fool.
Well, the thing is, like, interpretations be totally valid. That's the thing. I will make the argument, and if people agree with my interpretation, then that's all I really care about. In this case, nobody agrees with your interpretation, as the like-dislike ratio shows. There is a difference between a well-thought-out, logically founded interpretation, well-grounded in the universe that you are discussing, and I made it up. Hey.
Cool, and I have no doubt that I will have failed to convince most or even any of you. But let's make a deal. If you decide to argue with me in the comments, include the following phrase somewhere in your argument. You will die as your weakling father died.
Ah, Sigismund quote, well, that's something. But no, I am not going to argue with you in the comments because this entire thing just seems like a pathetic attempt for attention. Like, oh, please watch, please give me interaction. And hey, again, considering the dislike measures, you have achieved interaction, so that's good, I guess.
You'll get the satisfaction of tearing me down with a badass line, and
Don't, by the way. I know you're thinking about it. Don't. This is what he wants. He made a brief, basic bitch video with no real thinking about it, no real conscious thought put into it to try and rile you up. Avoid it. Hell, you know what I did? I got the link for this video and then I went to a site that allows you to download YouTube videos to make sure he didn't get a click. That's what you should do.
I, and everyone else at the very least, will know that you watched this
Yes.
entire video, were open to what I had to say, and that your argument is being made in good faith. Just keep the rest of it civil. My feelings can only be hurt so much. But if you think the idea of female space marines just being a possibility, according to one interpretation, is some kind of betrayal, if
Yes.
this discussion has caused you to decide that the woke moralists over at the Templin Institute have finally gone too far,
Oh, I think you were always this bad, frankly. People don't usually turn into retards like this overnight.
if even now you are furiously hitting the unsubscribe button,
Oh, don't worry. I was never subscribed.
well, the tree of any YouTube channel must from time to time be nourished by the blood of misogynists.
Watered, you mean, but okay, that's at least kind of funny, like, the blood of misogyny. Like, again, no thought was put into this video, because previously he was like, well, if we can all agree that, you know, you came to this conclusion without any misogyny, then that's good, and then like, well, if you disagree with me, you're a misogynist.
And as the saying goes, you will not be missed. In incoming, the Templin Institute.
Okay, and then we just have advertisement, yes. This was exactly what I expected it to be. It was precisely as stupid, it was precisely as formulaic, it was precisely as low effort, it provides nothing new, it has no arguments, it provides no insight, it doesn't even attempt to make the argument, and immediately begins with the conciliatory bullshit of, well, I just made it up, but you know what, that's okay. No, it actually isn't, and then a nice little butthurt reference there as well. So I'm actually kind of sorry. Like, I try not to be too much of an asshole on Twitter, but sometimes I get rowdy. But yes, this was sad. I'm sorry to say it, but this is rage bait of the purest form in that it fulfills no other role than to try and get people riled up to click on the video and then begging them to comment as well to hope that it gets picked up by the algorithm. Tragic. Truly. And that is about my full opinions on it. Formulaic, boring, uninteresting, intellectually brain dead to a degree that I have rarely seen since the 2016 bedroom feminist takes. And, my dude, your philosophy mail-order degree has failed you. Next time, at least try to do some basic research into what you're talking about before moving on to it. That'd be appreciated. Anyway, until next time, I have been Arch. I'm very glad this is all over, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.